Live from the Bob Levy Broadcast Center, overlooking the Toms River, it's time to get up, get out, do something. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Be a part of the show, 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Welcome back. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin, 7:08, Tuesday, May 3rd, 53 degrees, getting up to 55 and rainy today. WOBMAM 1160 at 1310 News Talk Radio, streaming live on the Radio Pup app and WOBMAM.com. 732-505-1160 to join the conversation. The conversation now turns, moves, transitions over to education, right? So we are talking now to Heather Hicks. She is an education advocate, special ed teacher in the Manchester School District. Good morning, Heather. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
I am fantastic. So, Heather, you have your name has been in the news, right? So you've been kind of in the middle of this education firestorm thing. So why don't you tell us how that all happened?
Okay, I'm not really sure how it all happened because it just kind of came to me about a little over a year ago. I went to the Board of Ed in Lacey, where I live, to talk about a program my son was using, blended learning, and he had been complaining about it for a while. I thought he was just being a typical teenager. You know, I hate school, it's boring. But I decided to sit down and watch with him, and it really was atrocious. It was recorded video lessons of a teacher sitting at a desk with a split-screen PowerPoint, and it was just terrible. It was very boring. It was almost insulting, I felt, to the students to be made to watch that. He didn't choose to be in that class. He was placed in that class. And so anyway, I did speak at the Board of Ed twice. They decided to get rid of that program, which was called Edgenuity. They did try another program this year. So that was about it. And then a year later, I was very surprised to get a phone call from some people from Baltimore, and they had gone to a tech ed conference. And the speaker, Bruce Friend, who's the chief operating officer of iNACOL, an international nonprofit in education, he put a big giant picture of me up on the screen, and he said, my presentation's about this lady, and basically proceeded to talk about how I didn't know what I was talking about, and I ruined 3 years of work because my school district decided not to use that program that he had recommended. So that kind of made me realize, wait a minute, what is going on here? And it's just kind of lit a fire under me to get even more involved.
Okay, so just to review, though, the program was stopped in Lacey.
Yes.
Right. They were so you made a compelling enough case, and I guess others had supported you.
Yes.
And
other parents did go and speak also, and students as well.
Okay. And so, but so now, so even though Lacey is free and clear, you are continuing down the road of now ridding this from the free universe. Is that it?
I don't know if it needs to be completely destroyed. I think that we need to look at the research and figure out how something like this could be used effectively, and that the resources that are provided need to be effective and dynamic and interesting to these students today. They're very savvy. So putting a boring teacher recorded lesson is not going to keep their interest or engage them. Right.
So do you feel like this is kind of the kind of typical of I know this is a slippery slope to some extent for you because you are a teacher. But do you think that this is kind of indicative of the overall kind of environment we've built in our education system, where we've turned into the robotic cookie cutter, Common Core, PARCC testing, standardized learning, one size fits all kind of approach to teaching?
Well, there you go. You just hit the nail on the head, because what's happened is, and it's really the corporate takeover of education. This has been going on since the 80s, where private corporations are trying to move funds and control of education from the public sector to the private. It's all about money. Are there elements that are good for education? Absolutely. But the thing is, people are barreling forward without really slowing down, doing the research, looking at the research, and unbiased research, not one study on, hey, this is our product, let's put it in your school, we'll give you all the resources you need, and we'll show that works, because that really doesn't show how it's going to work overall. So blended learning, park testing, all of those things are all connected, just as you said. And they use words like personalized learning to make it sound like it's individualized, but it's not always. It's a canned program. It's an algorithm. When you're using algorithms to teach, you're not individualizing it to the student. And then when teachers are forced into that, follow that certain program, that's content-driven, it's not student-driven. And so it's really the exact opposite of what it sounds like.
Right.
I think that's why a lot of people are fooled by that.
Right. So let's just be clear, though. So, because I guess it can be, I think a lot of people can misunderstand where people are on issues, especially in education, because I think it's, to your point, it's clearly not a one-size-fits-all. We know that kids learn in different ways. Some need to touch and feel. Some can sit there and just have it wash over them. Some need to write everything down. Some like me will never learn anything from anybody, so it's really just banging your head up against the wall. But I think so. Would you agree that we do need some form of and I'll call it, I don't want to call it Common Core, but do you believe that we do need some form of minimum standards, as an example, for what our kids are taught in school?
I do, and I feel like, I think you said before with the segment that it's more the way it's been implemented, Common Core, in addition to some aspects being that it wasn't really researched the way that they claim it was. It's not always developmentally appropriate. So I do feel like we need some kind of standard, but I also feel that control needs to be local, state and local level, not federal. Our nation is just too huge for that, first of all.
Right.
It doesn't allow for the diversity of the different schools where they're set, the student's life, make it applicable to their life. So yes and no. Does that help?
Yes and no. Okay, so let's take it that way then. So do you believe that the states or localities should have some parameters set around what their minimum standards should be around teaching?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And New Jersey's we've been the top educators for years, and our standards were wonderful. And it's a shame that everything is tied to money, because I'm sure that's why we adopted Common Core. But we could have instead just taken aspects maybe and added that to our already existing standards. I don't know. It's so complicated. It's hard to pull one issue out.
Heather, I don't know what you're talking about. It is clear that the Gates Foundation knows exactly how all of our kids should be educated. I mean, I don't know why you're even questioning that. That's craziness. It's crazy talk over here.
Don't get me started on that.
Okay. All right. So all right. Let's hold that. All right. So we kind of agree that there should be some standards, right? That there has to be some standards, because we can't just kind of do it willy-nilly, right? But to your point, that we certainly have different hurdles, obstacles, opportunities in different areas of the country. So we would like to see that localized, right? You're sounding very Republican right now, so that's strong. Number two, what I do want to talk about when we get back, though, is I do want to talk about how standardized testing fits into the whole thing, because it seems to be a hot button issue right now. I'm not sure why, but we'll talk about that. Heather Hicks, education advocate. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin, back after this.
The Sean Hannity Show, this afternoon at 3. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin returns next. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Make a difference at the Jersey Shore. 732-505-1160. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160, 1310, and WOBMAM.com.
Well, welcome back. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. 721, Tuesday, May 3rd, 53 degrees, get up to 55 degrees and rainy. WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. News Talk Radio, streaming live on the Radio Pop app and WOBMAM.com. 732-505-1160 to join the conversation. We were talking to Heather Hicks. We're talking Common Core. We're talking about blended learning, all that good stuff. So, all right. So, Heather, you just told me that you're an opt-out of park parent. So, come on, talk to me about the park test. What's your beef?
All right. Here's the deal. This test has not been truly standardized because it hasn't been used long enough. Also, there's no piloting of the PARCC test so that we can compare it to other assessments. And I have a huge issue with two specific things. Number one is annual testing is just not necessary to see how students are progressing with annual testing, 10-hour testing, disrupting schedules for 6 weeks, 5 and 6 weeks for students. So there's no need for that. We can see how students are doing by testing every other year, every couple of years, and still getting a good handle on how that's going. The other thing is the graduation requirement in New Jersey. It's insane that we would be using a test that's not even been vetted yet to say if a student can be ready to go out into the real world. Many states don't even have an exit test because it actually adds to the number of students who drop out prior to graduating. And it doesn't take into account all of the other things that students might do. Not everybody goes to college, and I'm a teacher, and I'm going to say it, not everybody should or needs to. And I think that's a huge problem with the mindset of achievement and assessment for education right now, is assuming every single person has to go to college. I just don't think it's fair, especially when we have huge numbers of students that drop out of college within the first 2 years because it really wasn't the right path for them.
So I agree with you. Obviously, listen, I'm certainly agree with you that not every kid needs to go to college. We're huge supporters of vocational education. I myself, I'm a college dropout, so you're preaching to the choir on this one. That being said, I guess to me there has to be some way of measuring effectiveness of our schools. Right. And so that's why I do believe that there, look, when I was a kid, I mean, we took an Iowa test or we took there was a California test or something like that. So there was always a test in place to make sure that kids were progressing. To your point, it wasn't annual, right? You took it, you certainly took it, early on, right, to kind of benchmark where you were probably in like middle school or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then high school, I guess the only thing you really did was take the SATs at that point, right, if you were interested in going on to college. So you don't believe that – do you believe there should be any form of testing in high school, or should it just be a junior year, or how would you do it?
I feel that we definitely still would need and utilize standardized testing. I think that, a judge has already said that New Jersey is basically breaking the law by changing this graduation requirement. We need a test that then is specifically geared to graduation requirements. And that's what the HESPA was. We just dumped it and put this new thing in place, and now we want to make this the law without following the proper procedures, and that's going to hurt a lot of people. We're now having to take kids that maybe weren't planning on taking the SATs or whatever, and they're having to use their whole senior year to try to take test prep classes to meet the requirements and portfolio classes and disrupting them. So the whole thing is just, barrel ahead. Don't worry about what the consequences are instead of planning ahead and trying to do it in a way that makes sense.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, listen, so these are you're making a compelling argument here, which is I knew I was going to be overmatched this morning, which is why I'm excited to say we're up against a break. Heather Hicks, education advocate, special ed teacher in Manchester, and eventually going to run for school board. I'm talking her into it in a break. So when we come back, we're going to give you the magic wand. We're going to give you the ability to make a difference. I'm sure we know in what way we're going to use that. All right. And we'll talk about more about how we can reform education. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin back after this.
The news never stops at WOBMAM.com. Get the latest from WOBM News, the Town Square, New Jersey News Network, and Fox News Radio. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Live from Town Square Towers at the heart of the Jersey Shore. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. Get up, get out, do something. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Hey, welcome back. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin, 7:34, Tuesday, May 3rd, 53 degrees, heading all the way up to 55 today. Rainy for most of the day, Could clear up later. WOBM AM 1160 and 1310 News Talk Radio, streaming live on the Radio Pup app and WOBMAM.com. 732-505-1160 to join the conversation. We are talking to Heather Hicks about all things education. Right. So, as we're getting her ready for her full platform for her Board of Education run, which she's really excited about, although she isn't saying she's doing that because anyway.
Maybe in the future.
In the future. All right. So talk to me about this, this new kindergarten assessment program you were talking about. What's going on there?
Okay. So this is part of Race to the Top funding. States that accepted this funding agreed to start a state database and to use assessment following kids from basically birth or preschool or as early as possible all the way through schooling. So New Jersey is piloting a program called TS Gold, Teaching Strategies Gold. And it's also already happening in other states. There's a lot of controversy around it because teachers are required to take video footage and photographs of students and upload it with information, including the student's name. So it has very specific personal information attached to it, and it's uploaded to a database. It's not like a number. Traditionally, students are assigned a number. Like the PARCC test, they get a number. So it's really an invasion of privacy, I think. A lot of parents aren't aware of just what's going to happen with that data. It's being stored away and why. So anyway, I do know that one teacher who was telling me about it, who's piloting the program, she's logged 180 hours working on this in addition to her regular teaching duties. It's a huge time constraint. It's overkill. It's really overkill, assessment and data overkill, which is part of this whole issue that's really stemmed from Common Core because it's all about collecting data to make sure that teachers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm not against data completely. Obviously, it can be helpful. But there's so much focus on that it really takes attention away from the student and instruction. There's more focus on data than on instruction.
Right.
So I just have a feeling that this is going to be something a little controversial as more people find out about it.
Well, and really, out of all this, we've now come up with your campaign platform, too, because you just said, I see it now, Heather Hicks, I'm not against data completely. Right. There you go. I got it. All right. Okay. So all kidding aside, though, and by the way, if you want to talk to somebody about how not to run for Board of Ed, I can help you with that. By the way, so I'm all about that. Listen. So we're going to give you the magic wand. I'm going to guess, and I don't usually like to blow up someone's spot, but I'm going to guess that there's a chance that your magic wand may have something to do with education in something that you're going to impact. I'm just guessing. I'm throwing it out there. All right, Heather, go ahead. What are you doing?
Two things come to mind. Come to mind right away. One is equitable funding and looking at poverty. All the research shows that everything to do with a child's progress has to do with their socioeconomic background. And yet that's being completely ignored. And it's just being put to the side and saying, hey, no matter what's happening at home, come to school and your teachers are going to magically make you just like all these other kids that come from a completely different background. So that's number one, looking at how we can fix that. I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
I just know it's something that needs to be done. And the other thing I think is just returning to focusing on instruction and not focusing on achievement. We're focusing so much on achievement. Even both of my sons have said this to me, that there's so much focus and pressure. Kids feel like they need to achieve, and there's no focus on who they are as a person. And isn't that much more important, who you are as a person, than what grade you get, what college you go to, what career you have? Why are you smirking at me?
Well, because this is where I struggle a little bit, okay? Because here's my problem, all right? And I'm just being completely transparent here. When little Johnny, little Jimmy, little Samantha gets out into the job market, right, the average employer is really less concerned about little Samantha's who she is as a person and more concerned about how she produces, right, is about production and about job performance. So I am sometimes conflicted by that because I understand what you're saying at core, not to use a bad word, but at core, I understand what you mean. It makes sense, right? But there's a fine line because we are teaching our kids to integrate into a competitive society.
But actually, what you just said,
Uh-oh.
you're saying that your performance, employers are only concerned about your performance. However,
Primarily.
your performance is tied to who you are as a person. How do you complete your work? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Because then you're going to do a much better job. And how are you treating the people you work with, the people you work for, the people you come in contact with? So really, those things go together. You can't separate it.
See, I knew. It's like I said, and I'm going to say it for the third time in the last 40 minutes. I knew I was going to be overmatched today, and so with that, I'm gonna yield. All right, go ahead. You had something else to say.
I just was going to say this shouldn't be taken the wrong way because there is now a movement toward assessment of student grit and their social and interpersonal skills.
Right.
And I don't want to start testing that either.
Right. Just so you know, I am the parent who, when my kids come home, and my wife will probably text me vouching for this, when my kids come home and say they got an A on a test, right, that they got a 95 on a test, I say, did anybody beat you? I'm definitely that kid. I'm definitely that parent. And that's it's a competitive results based deal. Although I would also tell you that when they come home with a not great grade, if I know they studied the best they could and they didn't understand a concept or they struggled with something, that I'm okay with that. Right? It's when they don't get a great grade because they were watching TV or playing video games that I really have a problem with them. But anyway, I digress.
But if your children were more artistic or they were more,
Yes.
service oriented or, whatever, then
Why
you would hope that.
Why are you saying my kids aren't artistic?
I don't
How
know.
do you know? Maybe they are very
Maybe
artistic.
they are, and you're just beating them down, saying, bring your grades up. I don't know.
Wow. Now, you know what? Now I'm going to have to go to 2 therapy sessions this week because thank you so much, Heather. You've really just destroyed all self-esteem. Heather, where can folks learn more? I know I'm looking at this website that you've recently become a part of, parentsacrossamerica.org. Is that a great place to go to learn more about all the issues that we're facing day by day?
It absolutely is. They have a lot of information. You can also go to Save Our Schools New Jersey. A lot of information about all the issues that are happening in education. And there's so much out there. If you just Google and look for something, you're going to find a lot of information, almost too much. So I really rely on Save Our Schools New Jersey and Parents Across America for a lot of the information.
Well, Heather, listen, I have some bad news for you because I think that you've done a good job here today educating us, me specifically. And so I think we're going to have you on again as we get through, because I'm sensing that we're not going to get less controversial issues as we move forward. We'll probably have more as we go. So will you join us again where we could talk again and you could beat me up some more?
Yeah, I would love to.
That would be great. Heather Hicks, education advocate, special ed teacher, Manchester Schools, and concerned parent in the Lacey School District. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. We'll be back right after this.